My name's Connor Drake. I am one of the senior coaches here at Mindmaven. It's a big part of my role over the last, say, 3 to 6 months has been doing a deep dive into AI and figuring out how AI is going to impact and augment what we do. A big part of what we do is all focused on productivity and the role of an EA and freeing up time and being more intentional. And I don't think the role of AI in that can be overstated. I am a coach with Mindmaven. We're an executive coaching firm that largely operates in the world of startups. We do a lot of work with founders, VCs, execs, and their EAs. And we've had the opportunity over the years to work with some pretty amazing people at some pretty amazing companies. And I'm actually happy to see that some of those amazing people happen to be on this call with us right now. What really sets us apart, though, for those unfamiliar with our work, is although most people know us as the productivity people and get you back 6, 7, 8 hours a week, all of that good and exciting stuff, our mission is very simple. We want to help leaders achieve what we call true greatness through relationships. The thing about this idea of true greatness, though, is that it's going to be different for everyone. I could sit down with Stuart and say, hey, Stuart, what's true greatness for you? Or Heather or Fergus. Everyone is going to have a different answer for what their definition of true greatness is. Maybe it's leaving a legacy or building a industry disrupting company or just leaving something behind for your kids, your partner. There's no right or wrong answer. But I believe, and we as a company collectively believe, that whatever your definition of true greatness is, the only way to reach it and keep it is through relationships. And the reason for that is really very simple. I feel very comfortable saying that you, referring to everyone on this call, you don't know anyone who has ever reached the top, who's achieved their wildest dreams, their goals, without some form of help from others. It just, Patrick, our founder, likes to say, it's a state that does not exist. And in my years doing this, I have yet to have anyone disagree with me that relationships are important, if not, the most important driver of success. And yet those same people will admit that they don't give relationships the attention, the time that they deserve, even though they just said, hey, they drive success more than anything else. And the reason for that is just about anyone on this call can probably attest to is very simple. It's that always present battle of urgency versus importance. Relationships and the things you have to do to take care of relationships will always fall into the camp of important, but very, very rarely urgent. And in a world that is increasingly urgency driven, things like that tend to fall by the wayside, even though we know that they are impactful. So solving that problem is really what Mindmaven was founded to solve, to do. And we've found that there's really, end of the day, there's really only two things that you can do. First things first, you can take the time that you have, however much time that is. Maybe you only have an hour a day between meetings, or maybe your calendar's not that crazy and you have 4, 5, 6 hours. It's not being eaten up by meetings. However much time you have, take that and make sure that you are using it intentionally and focusing on those things that matter most. We call that the superpower of intent, creatively. And then the other solution is what we call the superpower of leverage, which is freeing up time. And not just 5 minutes here and there, which is great, and 5 minutes adds up. But ideally what we're looking for is freeing up 6, 7, 8 hours a week. That's how you make really huge strides and big impacts on those things that matter most. And traditionally, the way that we've found to do that, to give people that leverage, to make that impact, is by making sure they're working with an assistant of some kind, and then turning that assistant into what we call an engagement manager or an EM. You're going to hear me use the term EM a lot over the course of this conversation, but long story short, I won't harp on this too much, but an EM is kind of like a cross between an EA and a chief of staff. They occupy that gray area in between, and end of the day, they typically have 3 high-level responsibilities. First up is freeing up as much of your time as possible from wherever possible. That's where you start getting back those 6, 7, 8 hours a week. And that's great. But the second responsibility that ties into that very closely is making sure that the time that you free up is being utilized well. Now, there's really no benefit in, say, throwing an hour out of your day from managing your calendar if all you do is then dump that hour into managing your inbox. There's no net gain there. You went from one reactive black hole to another one. So they're there to help make sure that the time that they help you free up is being leveraged effectively. And then finally, and in my opinion, most importantly, a great EM is also there to help you deliver more meaningful experiences to the people that matter most. They're there to help you manage your relationships, whether that's with your team or with your network as a whole. They are there to just make sure that you are operating at the highest level possible when it comes to arguably the most important part of your career and your life, your relationship and your connection with others. And a very common question that we get right now is how does AI factor into that? Is AI replacing this role of an EA or an EM? And it probably won't really surprise anyone to hear that we don't believe that AI is a replacement for an EA or an assistant. But we do believe that AI, I guess AI is going to do three things, at least at the current state it's at right now. First off, it's going to make this idea of leverage and freeing up time accessible to people who may not be in a position yet to afford an EA. So some of the things that an EA might do, AI can take some of that off of someone's plate if they don't have support. Number two, if someone's already working with an EA, it enables them to, I'd say it enables the EA to operate at a much higher level. There's a lot of things that an EA had to do themselves traditionally that were high impact and high value that the EA can now delegate, if you will, to AI. And we'll talk through a number of those here today. And then, of course, there's ways that execs with an EA can also leverage AI to continue saving time, even if they already have that support. But end of the day, moral of the story right here is that I do not believe AI in its current state is a replacement for a great EA or EM, nor do I believe really that it ever will be. There's a lot of talk with a lot of the EAs we've worked with who are afraid of losing their role to AI, and I hear that. And I'm going to speak what's quickly becoming a cliche, that AI is not going to replace EAs, but EAs who use AI will replace those who do not. So that's my belief here, that if we can learn how to leverage these tools, it doesn't replace anyone, but it enables everyone to operate at a much, much higher level. And that's really the focus of our speech here today. And I'm going to really focus on two different things. One is ChatGPT, how to leverage it in some obvious, but more importantly, some not so obvious ways. And then some tools outside of ChatGPT, some AI tools that you can be leveraging to increase different productivity outputs and all of that good stuff. So without further ado, let's dive into why everyone is here, starting with ChatGPT. So some quick basics that a lot of people aren't doing when it comes to getting set up with ChatGPT. First off, my favorite, a feature that most people really don't know exists, is the ability to appify a website, kind of turn it into a piece of software. And most people I work with, most of my clients, when I ask them to share their screen and they pull up their browser, they have somewhere between 50 and 250 tabs open at each point in time. And it's overwhelming. And if ChatGPT is one of those 50 to 250 open tabs, you're never going to find it. If you're not going to find it, you're not going to use it. So really quick tip that I can walk everyone through. In fact, I'm just going to share my screen and walk you through how to do this, if I can find the right one. There we go. Can everyone see a ChatGPT window right now? Good. Thank you for the nodding along. To appify any website, ChatGPT or otherwise, if you click these dots here in Chrome, go down to, I believe it's More Tools, and Create Shortcut. It's ChatGPT here. I'm going to hit, yeah, the name's fine. Open this window, and I'm going to create that. And what that immediately does, I put it on my other monitor, but it turns it essentially into a piece of software that exists down here in my toolbar now. If I hit the Start button, which is not on this monitor, so I apologize that you can't see that, but it's now a searchable, quote unquote, piece of software that I can open, and it exists outside of my browser. In theory, it's still just a browser window, but it makes it much easier to find and access ChatGPT, in my opinion. So really quick tip, but highly recommend you do it. In fact, you might even go so far as to pin it to your taskbar. So even if it's closed and I'm starting my day and I want to have access to ChatGPT, all I have to do is click that and it's going to open it right up for me. It'll be signed in, all of that good stuff. So even though there's not official ChatGPT software, you can make it yourself in a couple clicks. Moving along, back to the deck here. All right, number two, This is relatively recent. Forgive me if everyone here has done this already, but I found a lot of people don't know that ChatGPT does now officially have an iOS app. If you have not downloaded that, please do. As an Android user, I am sad to say that they do not yet have an Android app. But what I do is I created a browser shortcut, put it on my home screen. So for all intents and purposes, it's an app. The key here, as with anything, is to make these tools as quick and easy to use as possible. If you have to go through a bunch of steps to find something, to activate something, to sign into something, you're not going to do it. And even if it seems like it just saves 15, 30 seconds having an app downloaded or appifying a site, if you use it a lot, 15, 30 seconds adds up quickly. All right, moving along. Better managing the chats. So anyone who has used ChatGPT knows that for the most part, let me find, there we go, ChatGPT here. ChatGPT is organized using these chats here. This is your conversations with AI, but most people don't leverage them very well. They tend to do one of two things. Probably the most common thing I have seen is that people use one chat. They have this one chat and they say, okay, I don't know. I think of what would be a good one to include here. Let's just do creates a list of the most popular books for startup CEOs. We've got that. Great. We get a quick answer to that. And then in the same one, they're going to say, write an email response to XYZ, and now do this and now do that. And it's all in one chat window, which has a number of downsides. One, it makes it very hard to scroll back and find what you're looking for. If you've been doing this for a couple of weeks, couple of months, you're going to have a very long list of things. It's a nightmare to scroll through all that. That's number one. Number two, maybe more importantly, is if you're leveraging ChatGPT right, you essentially train these various chats in different ways. You can train one to write in your voice, or to do research the way you like it, or to format things in a specific way. And if you start muddying up a trained chat room or a chat box with unrelated things, if you say train one up on writing emails, but then you start asking it to do research, it confuses it, and you start getting poor quality results. So long story short, when I say better manage chats, it means having dedicated chats for different workflows. If you're going to have it write emails for you, have a chat dedicated to writing emails. If you're going to train it to write blog posts for you, have one dedicated to that. Research, one dedicated to that. It's going to make it easier to find, and it's just ultimately going to be more valuable. All right. Those are the quick tips out of the way. I really want to focus on for ChatGPT is what I, not very creatively, call prompt crafting, which is just how do you communicate with ChatGPT in the most effective way? How do you give it good prompts? Because good prompts give you good output. Bad prompts give you bad output. And the high level quick tip I've had for you here before I'm going to give you the three tips for this is think of ChatGPT like an intern almost. They're a person, they're smart, they're capable, they're creative, but they do not have the knowledge and the context that you have. And so if you hire a brand new intern to your company and you give them a one sentence direction, they may or they may not produce a good result. They don't have what you have in your head. So you have to operate with ChatGPT in that context. It is smart, it is valuable, but as of right now, it can't read your mind. We don't have the Neuralink chip yet. So circle back maybe 5-10 years from now, and we may be at that point. But for now, ChatGPT needs a little bit of hand-holding to leverage well. So on that note, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over our benefits slide here. So really quick, I don't just want to give you, hey, here's how to do prompts well. I want to teach you how to do prompts well in a way that is impactful. So what I want to focus on, using ChatGPT for here at least, is the skill of what we call Whitespace Time. For those who have not been clients, general idea of Whitespace Time is making sure that every single week you have 4 consecutive uninterrupted hours at the same day and time for important proactive work that if you don't make the time for it, you're not naturally just going to find the time for. And it's getting it on the calendar is great and valuable, but leveraging the time well can sometimes be difficult. And there's a number of ways that AI can help with that. So let me skip all over this and get to our first rule of prompt crafting. Number 1, creating an identity for ChatGPT. Highly recommend that every prompt that you start, or at least every new conversation you start, begins by giving ChatGPT a job. If we continue this metaphor of hiring the intern, it'd be like hiring someone but not really giving them a job description. They're just floating there. and you sometimes give them jobs for this, for that, and you never really know what you're going to get back because they don't know what it is that you want. They don't have a job title, they don't have a role, so they're just kind of floating. So if you can begin your prompts with something like from the point of view of, or act as a, or take the role of a, you're giving ChatGPT that role, that identity, and it's going to do its best to operate from that role and identity. So thinking of the scope of Whitespace Time for important proactive work, something that might fall into that bucket would be, thought leadership, building your thought leadership if you want to be, a recognized expert in your space. So you might start a prompt with, act as a thought leadership consultant who teaches startup founders how to become recognized experts in their space and coaches them on how to create high quality content. All right, so giving it identity, and then this bonus tip is one of my favorite things that I've come across with ChatGPT, just to make sure that it understands its job, ask it to describe its role to you. So if I were to take this, I've got to copy it over here. So let me grab it. I'm going to paste it into ChatGPT, and we're going to see what it does with it. And usually ChatGPT is reliable. Every once in a while it embarrasses me, but let's find out. We hit new chat. I got this prompt in here along with please describe your role to me. Let's see what we get back. So at a quick skim, clearly understands what its role, how it's going to help me in this chat. Good, so that tells me what I need to know. It understands its job. So that's really part number one. It has a job, it knows what it is doing. Jumping back over here. Number two, forgive me if this seems obvious, but again, most people don't do this well. ChatGPT is an intern. It does not have your knowledge, it does not have your context, it has not been doing this job for the last 15 years. So it needs to know what you want. Imagine you're working with a brand new employee. What do they need to know if you're going to delegate something to them successfully? So include something like, we're just continuing the same prompt here. For context, I'm the founder and CEO of a company that produces AI tools to increase productivity, blah, blah, blah. Our newest tool is this. Here's what we do, and here's really what I want to focus on. I want to focus on growing my newsletter. Bonus tip here, again, one of my favorites, is it's great for you to give ChatGPT context, what you think it needs to know, but ask ChatGPT what it thinks it needs to know to do its job well. By saying, hey, interview me. Please, yes.
So what about if you just shared your LinkedIn profile with ChatGPT? Could it learn your role better than you describing it in a paragraph?
Yes. So ChatGPT interacting with websites right now is a little bit shoddy. Okay. I've had some victory in saying, hey, look at this LinkedIn profile and compile information for me. Sometimes it does it well. Sometimes it really misses the mark, and sometimes it even says, hey, that's outside of my capabilities. So if you were going to do that, one way that you could do it to circumvent the issue with ChatGPT being able to analyze websites is, one, copy and paste the information from LinkedIn into ChatGPT would be one way, and say, hey, here's the information. Another way would be using a tool that I'm going to show you in just a moment that does allow ChatGPT to interface with websites a little bit better. So long story short, yeah, go ahead.
No, you can. I cut you off. I didn't mean to.
Just to summarize, ultimately, baseline ChatGPT struggles with LinkedIn and social media profiles, largely because of the fact that it can't, it doesn't have access to information later than 2021. For those that were not aware, anything newer than 2021, ChatGPT does not know out of the box. There's ways you can change that, and I'll walk you through that in a moment. But that's why it can be a little bit limited when it comes to things like social media.
Okay. The other question I have is, when you first talked about creating an app, I was trying to do it at the same time, and I didn't see the 3 dots, the hamburger menu that you went to. Will you be sending instructions out? And is it only for ChatGPT Plus, which I saw you had?
Great question. So first off, yes, I will be sending instructions out. Everything that I'm going to show you here today, even though I'm on ChatGPT Plus, does not require ChatGPT Plus. So base plan is just fine. To jump back over there, what you're looking for, ultimately, let me find, it's, these 3 dots up here, more tools, not install typing mind, more tools, and then create shortcut. And again, I will be sending these out as directions as well.
Okay, sorry. So we just go to the general chat feature of ChatGPT and then do that?
Correct, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it. Any other questions while we're at a natural pause here? All right. Then let's see how ChatGPT does. If we continue this, we give it this context. I'm going to switch back over to my ChatGPT window in the same chat because we're building the context here. We're teaching it here, copying and pasting in that prompt. You can see here, it gives me a list of, let's see how many questions it gives me. Okay, 10. So for what it's worth, usually if you say, hey, give me a list of at least 10 or 10 or more, it's probably going to default to whatever you ask. It doesn't usually go above and beyond. So it's kind of a lazy intern. But in other words, it falls back to asking ChatGPT exactly for what you want. But what I could do here now, which I won't do live for the sake of time, if I were to take the time and answer these questions and send it over to ChatGPT, it's going to have a whole lot more context now on who I am, what I do, who I serve. And based on that information, it's going to be able to put together much more valuable answers and recommendations for me in this chat window. All of that makes sense. Going to get some nodding just to know everyone's following along. Good. All right. Then let's move on to number 3, which actually falls into this, 10 or more, 10 or less. It's going to default to what you ask for. So if you know what you want, or at least have an idea of what you want, ask for what you want. Otherwise, you don't really know where ChatGPT is going to take things. So be explicit in your asks, and also be, well, like the slide says, be iterative. Don't be afraid to give feedback. You ask for something, it gives you a result, just like with an intern or employee. If it is not what you were looking for, give ChatGPT feedback because it will learn from that. So if we continue this example we've been working with here, I might say, hey, please create a bullet point list of 10 ways I could grow my newsletter, focusing on unique or industry-specific strategies over traditional or cliche advice. There's a very clear ask in there that I don't want the obvious things. And I told it exactly what I want. Bullet point list, 10 items, growing my newsletter. So let's jump back over to ChatGPT, see how it does with this information. Great. So it's putting together a list of ways that I might be able to grow this hypothetical newsletter of mine. But let's say this is okay. This is great. This is a lot of information to look at. I want to be able to skin this a little bit easier. So I'm going to iterate. Like I said, maybe this wasn't the result I thought I wanted. So instead, I'm going to say, why don't you structure this information in a table for me with the following information? Give me, each strategy's estimated new subscribers, time investment on my end, and what the cost might be. Let's put that in. A lot of people don't know ChatGPT is totally capable of creating tables, does a great job. It's copy and pastable into Excel from here. It's a great way to leverage it. How did it do? It's not a bad job, especially given the very little context I gave it. I didn't tell it how many subscribers I currently have. I told it nothing. So based on the little information that it has, this is what it put together. This may not all be accurate, the fact that these are all $0 costs, so ChatGPT can't always do all the thinking for you, but it does at least get you started. And then I could take this one step further and say, I don't know, organize this list in order of new subscribers, put the most subs at the top. That's going to restructure that table for me, and hopefully, put the highest impact items at the top, going down. So the moral of that story, if you will, is just to iterate and offer feedback as often as possible to get what it is that you're looking for. Because not only are you getting a better answer for exactly what you're asking for right now, as long as you stay in this specific chat window with ChatGPT, you are training it on, generally speaking, here's also what I'm going to want in the future. So it becomes smarter and smarter the more you use it and the more you give it feedback, just like any working relationship. So I know I keep harping on this point of think of it as an intern, but please think of it as an intern. It sounds ridiculous, but think of it as a person. You're investing into a relationship here, and whatever you would do to invest into a long-term relationship with an employee that you want to keep, you might want to consider doing the same for ChatGPT. So very quickly here, the 3 elements of a great prompt: give it an identity, give the clarity and context that you need and you feel it needs, and ask it to ask for the clarity and context that it thinks it needs as well. And then ask specifically for what you want. Now, not every prompt needs to be, this is maybe 6, 7, 8 sentences. It's basically a paragraph of a prompt here, a multi-stage prompt. Not everything is going to be that involved. You certainly can jump over to ChatGPT and give it a 1-sentence prompt and say, hey, do this thing for me. There's nothing wrong with that. But for the things where if it's a context heavy task, like building thought leadership, it needs to know about you, your company, your audience. Take the time to go through this process, and you're going to get much higher quality results from it. And then, of course, finally, feedback, name of the game. I know I'm harping on this point as well, but the first thing you get back from ChatGPT is probably not going to be perfect. Talk to it like a person. Make this more conversational. Make this more formal. Include more examples. One of my favorites for content creation, personally, is rewriting something as if you're explaining it to a 12-year-old. That's great. There's a bunch of studies on, if you're writing content for a non-technical crowd, write it to a middle schooler. This is a great way to, I don't want to say dumb down content, but make content more accessible to people and write it in very, very easy to read, easy to digest ways. Works for emails too. That makes emails a little bit friendlier, a little more conversational. So that, in a nutshell, is the prompt crafting framework. I'm going to jump back to the previous slide just to have it up. Any questions on that before I get to some specific use cases for ChatGPT? All right, no burning questions. At least no one's unmuting. I'm going to take that either as a good sign or a bad sign. I'm going to say good. All right, if that changes, of course, please feel free to jump on, interrupt me. But let's talk actually.
Connor, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I do have one quick question. Is there
Please.
somewhere in ChatGPT, like where when you create your identity, right? Like I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of chats that you'll have that you may want to use that same identity. Is there somewhere you can sort of store that, or are you just like putting it in a document and then you just have to copy and paste it? Or is there somewhere in ChatGPT where you can store that identity so every time you want to use that, you can just go to that and start your new chat with that?
Great question. So base ChatGPT, no, there's not a great way to store identities, but with some outside tools you can, and I'll walk you through one or two of those tools here in a moment. In fact, one thing I don't have a slide for, I'm just going to mention it here so I make sure I send it in the follow-up. There is a free Chrome extension called Superpowered ChatGPT, and it's an interface plugin, basically, that gives you a little bit more functionality, and it's free. There's a paid tool I'm going to mention in a moment that I recommend over Superpowered, but it's a great place to start. And I think it may allow you to create these saved identities. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think it does. If nothing else, it allows you to create folders and search ChatGPT, but otherwise copy and paste, or just continue using the same chat window where you created that identity. With the caveat that ChatGPT's memory is huge, but it does have a limit. You will start to notice eventually if you were to use the same chat for weeks and you keep going back to it, adding more and more content, maddeningly, it does seem to dumb down a little bit over time as it loses access to some of the earlier messages. And so that's when you might need to recreate the chat, which you could do via copying and pasting or one of the tools that I'm going to walk you through. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Then let's move on to some use cases for ChatGPT, starting with some of the obvious ones that most people use ChatGPT for, but don't leverage it well. First one is understanding your writing style, getting it to write content in your voice and your style. Easiest, best way I found to do that is, again, give it an identity. You are now Writer GPT. You can give it a name if you want. I like playing around with that sometimes. You're going to help me write high quality content in a specific style and tone. This is the key part of this prompt here. Analyze the style and tone of a given piece of text and create a bullet point description of that text style and tone. This enables you to confirm that ChatGPT understands your style. So I've got a pre-written prompt here that I'm just going to drop into ChatGPT so you can see how this specific use case works. This comes from one of our blog posts. And I'm going to create a new chat for this to demonstrate. So I've got this prompt here at the top and then text, and then here is just copied and pasted from a blog post. I'm going to send that off to ChatGPT, and it is going to analyze that for me. So it's going to think for a little moment. Come on, you can do it. It does every once in a while get a little bit caught up. So I'm going to give that a moment to think. Alternatively, You can give it a new prompt, and if need be, there we go. If it gets stuck like that, start a new chat or just copy and paste the same exact prompt into the same chat window, and that'll usually kickstart it. So we can see here, okay, it estimates this is the style of that message. This is the tone of that extract. And I can give it a skim. And if it feels accurate, great. Basically, this chat is now good to go in terms of replicating my style. I could have a follow-up prompt like, hey, based on the style and tone you identified, write what comes next in this blog post, or write an email saying this, or whatever. You've taught it its style and tone. If it missed the mark, if one of these bullet points was wrong, and for whatever reason I disagreed, and I didn't want the language to be straightforward and easy to understand, I could say, hey, that part's not right. I prefer complicated and difficult to understand. And you're going to teach it. That's the style I actually want. So again, iterate, give feedback. But in all the times I've tested this with various writing styles, it tends to do a pretty damn good job. This just helps you confirm that it is indeed making the assumptions you want it to assume on that line of text. All right, so that is training training it to be writing in your style. I would recommend, because people tend to have different writing styles, you might have one style for, say, writing emails and another style for writing blog posts if you do that. Have two separate windows for that. So you're training, or two separate chats open for that, because you're training in two different writing styles. If you try and mix and match the two, you're going to cause ChatGPT to struggle. One conversation per use case. All right. Proofreader, another good one here that people kind of use but don't do it very well. So it starts off fairly obvious. We give it a job. You're a professional editor. Proofread the text. Here's kind of what to look for. But this line here at the bottom, in addition, provide a bullet point list of all changes made to the extract. This is really helpful because it not only tells you what was changed, it also tells you why it changed that. So it makes it really easy for you to decide, hey, do I like these changes or do I not? So let's test that as well, just so you can see how this one's going to work. We'll create a new chat here, drop that in. Again, I like asking, do you understand? Just so it does confirm, yes, I understand that. Good. Then let's give it some text to proofread, and you'll see what it does. Here's the text to proofread. Put that there. Let's see if it's going to. All right. This is a relatively new thing that I've noticed. I don't know why it's doing this, but recently when I have it proofread text, it puts the output in bullet point form rather than paragraph form for whatever reason. As you can imagine, very easy to fix. All I have to say is, please remove the bullet points. I don't want that. And it's going to give me the exact same line of text without those bullet points. But long story short, what you can see is it made changes and it listed out the changes made. It's kind of like having track changes made, track changes turned on in Word. Really help for you to see what you disagree with and what you don't. Carlos, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question regarding it was about the previous, but it also works for this, what you're showing right now. You were mentioning not to have at the same time two different styles of writing, but can you teach them as a style of writing, as you wrote in a previous prompt, you said, this is Write GPT, and every time you write as Write GPT, you write in this style, and every time you write at this prompt or whatever name I give it, you write in this style. Is that possible to have it do that?
You could. I've played around with that a little bit. Long story short, I personally have had better results having two separate chat windows rather than having one chat window and saying, hey, this is your name. If I say this, you're writing emails. If I say this, you're writing text. I found the waters get muddied a little bit if you do it that way. I recommend two separate chats.
Okay, so if I do it, even if I do it in two separate chats, every time I tell them this, they already know from the learning curve, or do I need to reteach them every time I want to start a new chat with this style or other style?
Got it. So anytime you create a new chat, think of it as a blank slate or a new hire, if you will. Unfortunately, there is no interplay between the chat windows yet. I could not say, hey, in the stone and tile style analysis, write in that style. I bet you that's not far in the future, the ability to have some linking between these chat windows, but it doesn't exist right now. So you will need to retrain by copying and pasting, or again, using one of these other tools that does allow you to create these pre-built, pre-trained agents, they're often called.
Okay, and last, then going into that, you said you're going to mention later about apps or add-ins. that we can use about, because I can write in the stone and style and keep using the same style along and change the subject and keep using it. So that you're going to show an app or add-in that will help us go through all that instead of scrolling through all those and maintaining the same style in that window. Is that correct?
Yes, I will say for the most part, once I've trained this chat, it is going to keep this style and tone for anything I ask it to write for a very long time. I won't need to retrain it very often unless I start a new chat, in which case, again, it's either copying and pasting or it's going to be using a pre-built agent using one of the add-ins, which I'll show in just a moment.
Okay, great. That was the question. So there's an add-in that you're going to show later so I can extrapolate that to a new chat. Great.
Exactly. Yes.
Appreciate it.
You got it. All right. So that's Proofreader in a nutshell. Let's do, how are we doing on time? These always go so much faster than I want them to. So let's do this. This is a multi-step prompt, but it can be really, really helpful. It's one of the use cases I think that some of the clients I've worked with have found the most valuable. So long story short, we teach something in the work that we do called meeting debriefs. Typical, traditional approach to a meeting debrief is it's a dictation that we train executives and founders to make the moment they leave a meeting that captures 4 pieces of information. It's going to capture all the action items, things they commit to and others commit to, any professional challenges the other party is facing, any personal interests and passions, and any other just miscellaneous information. This makes meetings much more productive by making sure that action items are tracked and followed through on, and better equips you to invest into the relationship. By capturing things like, hey, what are they struggling with? What do they care about? What do they do on the weekends? What's the name of their kids? When's their birthday? We want to make sure this information is captured and sorted in a way that's easy to reference. And traditionally, this goes to an EA who sorts this information. That's still the most effective way to do it. But there are ways you can leverage ChatGPT to capture and sort meeting takeaways. So this is a multi-step prompt. This is where you create a brand new chat because you're creating this kind of new identity for ChatGPT. And you'd start with something like, you are now Debrief GPT, here's what you're going to do. Do you understand? I'm going to go through all the parts of this prompt, and I'll show you what it looks like in practice. So do you understand? It's probably going to come back and say yes. So then you're going to send another message defining what those 4 elements are. The action items are this. Here's some examples. Professional challenges are this. Here's some examples, et cetera, et cetera. You can ask if it makes sense, and it's going to confirm that it does. You're going to give it the format you want when you perform a debrief. Give me the information back in this order. Name of the person I met with, their title, their company, and then the 4 pieces of information. What you can see is what it does for you is compile in a very easy to reference way. So now you or your EA could say, for instance, copy and paste these action items into a task management tool of some kind so they can be tracked. Or you can copy and paste the relationship information like their challenges or personal interests, go into some sort of a CRM or even just an Excel spreadsheet where you track information on the most important. Then you can even go one step further and say, okay, great, that looks good. Based on that information, please write me a follow-up email that I can now send out to Adam afterward. And it did a decent job of putting together a follow-up email. Now, this particular chat, at least as I've done it here, is not trained on how I like emails written. This is not, from my opinion, a ready-to-send email, but it does give me something I could copy and paste into Gmail, make some edits to, and send out in a fraction of the time than if I were to try and sit down and write it yourself. All of that kind of makes sense, how you might leverage it for meeting takeaways. All right, got some nodding. Carlos, I see your hand up. Is that still up from before, or is there do you have a question?
Well, I have another question regarding this thing. When you have a Zoom meeting and you recorded it and you have a transcript, will it do the same with that format? I just put in the transcript into it. Will it be too long for him, or should I put it in chunks? I've heard somewhere about chunks that ChatGPT will you give it and it'll give you chunks and you start feeding it chunks and it'll be better for it. Is that something that you're going to talk about, or is it something that just made up?
That I personally have not tested that yet. Let me put it this way. Transcripts, in my experience, are always too long for ChatGPT right now. If you copy and paste a transcript in, it's not going to be able to do that if it's anything longer than, say, a 15-minute meeting. It might be able to do that. But I have not tested Jones to see if it's an interesting idea. I'd need to test it. And if you test it, you find it works, I'd love to hear about it.
I can see where I heard that over the weekend and give you the link, because I think it was an app that will chunk it up for you so you can upload it to ChatGPT by chunks, and then he will be able to get it all together.
Okay, that'd be great. And I actually have a tool coming up that I'm going to showcase that might solve this in a different way for you. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You got it. All right. For the sake of time, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time here. I have a handful of other built-in prompts that will all be included in the session overview email I'm going to send out after. I'm not going to go through every single one of those here today. There's a couple tools outside of ChatGPT I'd like to showcase as well. But let me maybe do one more that people have found valuable. Where is that? Let's do, I think this is what I'm looking for. Okay, so this idea of Whitespace Time. You have this big block of time. You have a number of tasks that you've probably been putting off for weeks, months, in some cases years, because you don't know where to start. ChatGPT can be great at breaking down large tasks into more manageable action items and chunks. You could almost turn it into, say, almost an executive coach, is what I did in this prompt here. You might say, act as a serial entrepreneur turned executive coach for first-time founders who offers actionable proven advice. I'm about to start my first fundraising round. That's a huge task. I don't know where to start with that. Please create a list of tasks I should focus on in order of priority to raise my Series A. Do you understand? Yes, no. And then this line right here, this do not create the plan yet, is important because this is a great example of where ChatGPT is going to really struggle to put anything personalized together if it doesn't know anything about you. This is a perfect opportunity to use that interview me prompt. Ask me 10 questions to learn about my business, to learn about me. And based on that, it's going to be able to put together a much more comprehensive set of tasks for you. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to demo that because I think it's pretty straightforward. But what you'll find is it's going to put together a list of tasks. If they still seem too big, again, iterate, say, okay, step one sounds good. Can you break that down into a weekly plan? How can I do task number 1 in a week? And it's going to give you a list of, I don't know, maybe 10, 14 individual tasks that you can be doing that move you forward. So if you have big projects where you don't know where to start, get outside of your own head, give it to ChatGPT. It may not be exactly what you need to do, but it will get you again out of your own way, out of your head, and you'll realize, oh, okay, 7 of these 10 tasks are actually perfect. I can start on these, and once you get some momentum, usually you're going to be good to go. It's getting that starting momentum to keep going. The ChatGPT can be great at that. Now, I've hinted at a tool outside of ChatGPT a couple times now with some extra functionality. The number one alternate interface that I've found that I really enjoy for ChatGPT is called Typing Mind. Unlike Superpower, which I mentioned earlier, it is premium and that you do have to pay a one-time fee for Typing Mind. I think it's $60, and in my opinion, absolutely worth it. I'll give you a very quick demo of it, at least some of the features that I like most. Probably the biggest one for me, as someone who does a lot of dictations on my phone, is this speech to text here. So if I were to say, I don't know, what prompt can I give it? Let's say it's listening now, so this is powered by OpenAI's Whisper, so it's a very high quality transcription. What I'm going to do is say, create a table for me showcasing the most popular electric cars over the last 10 years, include the make, model, and number of sales, and the most popular color for each car. I'm going to hit finish. It's going to transcribe it. Usually takes seconds. Great, and it's going to do its best to put together a table for me. That I find much more intuitive, just because of the habits I've built in sitting down and trying to type these prompts out. You don't have to have perfectly crafted prompts. They can be a little bit messy. It's going to figure out what you want more often than not. So how accurate this is partially up to you to figure out. As someone who knows nothing about electric cars or the industry, I can't at a glance say, okay, this is probably accurate. If it was something I knew a little bit more about, I might be able to discern better. But more often than not, like any work with an intern, you're going to want to do a little bit of fact checking to make sure that the data that it's giving you is correct. Another thing that it has built in, if I were to start a new chat, you can turn on plugins. One of the plugins that it has is web search. So this is what enables you to get beyond that 2021 limit. And Typing Mind can combine ChatGPT with, say, a Google search and give you more accurate, more recent information. Like, well, at the risk of potentially embarrassing myself, or I guess embarrassing Typing Mind, let's say, who won the 2023 Oscar for Best Actor? What movie was it? So in theory, ChatGPT on its own has no way of knowing that. That's more recent. But there we go. We know that. I happen to know that it's accurate because it was able to do the web search. You can even, if you're curious where it's information, you can look at the result here and it says, okay, this is the websites that I skimmed to compile that information. So research tasks specifically, that web search functionality is worth its weight in gold. Because if nothing else, even if this isn't everything I was looking for, I now have a list of websites I can directly go to do my own research. What else? I guess the other thing is just the fact that there are folders here which allow you to organize ChatGPT much better. By default, you still can't click and drag things. This is always going to be in order of the most recently used. Not super helpful in my opinion, but being able to put things in folders or even just drag and drop them wherever you want them to go, super helpful. So highly recommend Typing Mind, or if nothing else, check out Superpowered. Superpowered is the kind of free version of Typing Mind. They're both great. This just has some added functionality that I enjoy. All right, and in the little bit of time I have left, I'm going to do a very quick demo of tools outside of ChatGPT for you. So I've got 3 here that I want to showcase that have been hugely impactful. Number 1 is, let me jump ahead here. There we go, Mano. So Mano is kind of like a jack of all trades plugin that brings ChatGPT to just about any web page. It's a Chrome extension that you can download. There is a free version if you aren't a heavy user of ChatGPT, but it automates a lot of, in my opinion, otherwise kind of dull processes. So let's jump back over here. One of my favorite use cases for it is once I have Mano installed, when I'm in Gmail, I have this little hand that pops up here. So I'm in an email and I can have it auto reply to this email. So I get this: quick question for you, signed up for an Asana account, blah, blah, blah. How do I create teams? You mentioned that. What do I need to do? Let's see what Mano does. I hit that reply button. I gave it nothing beyond the scope of it read this email. It also has the ability to read an entire email chain. So if there's back and forth, it will take the entire email context into advisement. One thing that it is working on that's not in here yet, it'll customize the style of the response based on your writing style pretty soon. But for now, I could say the information is great, but can you make this more conversational? And it's going to rewrite it in a more conversational tone. But in a single click, I was able to draft a response. This, my EA has been using because she does a lot of my email writing for me, and this is hugely helpful. It saves a lot of time on the EA side because all you do is essentially become an editor. Rather than being the one who writes the emails now, all you're doing is editing them. One other quick use case for this that I use often is summarizing text quickly. So we've got a blog post here, pretty long form blog post, but I want to know the gist of it. If I hit the Mano thing here and I turn on read screen. So this is someone, I'm trying to remember who it was, Heather, it might have been you, was asking about LinkedIn. I would be very curious to test this on LinkedIn. I have not done so yet. But if I create a new chat, I turn read screen on, I could say, summarize the following article. And it's going to read the screen and it's going to put together a paragraph or two, or okay, that's a very, very long summary. So let's again say, okay, intern, thank you for the effort, but that's too long. Can we limit it to 1 paragraph? Okay. Oh, okay. This is the limitation of Mano, so bear with me on that one. It's a bit of a struggle in giving it very, very long form articles. It has a token limit that I'm working on overriding, but usually what I just walked you through works much better. If it were to have given me a 1 paragraph reply, there's a lot more I can do to interact with it. But even so, at a glance, this is still a much easier, quicker read than this entire piece. And it's, in my experience, it's going to be very accurate. All right, moving on really quick. So that's Mano. Highly recommend checking it out. Great Chrome extension. Premium tool up next. Ren Systems is probably the most promising AI relationship management tool that I've found so far. It kind of has two parts to it. The first part, which you can see demoed on the screen right now, is a kind of like a live news feed of the most important relationships in your network. You tell it who you care about, and anytime one of your key relationships is in the news or their company is in the news, they're going to show up in this news feed. So you can quickly skim and see, okay, what's going on with people that I care about most. That's a great tool, but not a whole lot of AI in that part of it. Where AI comes into play is that reach out button you see at the bottom of every single article. If I were to click that, I'm going to get a pop-up that looks a little bit like this, where I have three options in terms of types of emails I could send. I could, based on that article, I could send a catch-up email, a congratulation email, or an email offering my support. And the text you see on the screen here is auto-generated by Ren. So I'd say, okay, this is the catch-up email. This will be congratulate email. And offer support didn't really work because this was it's a positive article. There's nothing to offer support on. Usually it's kind of a condolences thing. If it was a headline around someone having to fire a key member, offer support would be a much more accurate one to use. But it auto-generates that, and then you can hit that open email button at the bottom. It's going to put that into a Gmail draft for you automatically. And then what you're going to want to do, because this is still, it's AI, it doesn't have the context, the information to really deliver a great experience, you're still going to want to add some personalization in there. So spend 2 minutes max customizing it to make it something that feels like it's coming from you and has a relationship history rather than this very vague outreach. And if Chauncey Hamilton here gets this email from me out of the blue, it's going to feel good. It's an email you probably wouldn't have sent otherwise. It's going to make the other person feel good, and that's a great way to invest into the relationship. So definitely recommend checking that out if everyone is in agreement that relationships are a key factor of success, like we talked about at the start. And the final tool, which I've actually had going this entire call, is a tool called Fathom, probably the single most recommended tool in my toolkit right now. It's a meeting recorder, first off. So you'll see in this Zoom room with us, there is a Connor's Fathom participant. So it records meetings automatically, which is great. But what is especially helpful is at the end of every single meeting, it creates, it creates a meeting summary for me. So roughly 30 to 45 seconds after any meeting, I get a link to a page that looks something like this. It's got the video at the top. It has a very accurate transcript automatically put together from that meeting here. I can create AI summary, and it creates summaries of different parts of the conversation, so I can see at a glance what we were discussing. Really great for sharing this with team members who weren't able to be on the call but just need to get the highlights. So that's great. The I'd say feature that I care about like the most though is, let me see if I can find, I'm looking for a very specific part of Fathom. So give me 1 second. Let me drag that over. Is everyone able to see a little Fathom window here in kind of the upper right corner of my screen now? Good. So this is present for me at all times on the call. And if I were to say promise something to Eugene, or you were to promise something to me, you said, hey, I'll send you this. The moment that happens, I can hit this little check mark here for action item. And what it's going to do, let me see if I can demo this live. Let's say, Gino, after this call today, I'm going to make sure that I send you a link to check out Fathom. I'll send you my personal invite code that's going to allow you to bypass that wait list. I'm going to hit that action item. It's going to tag that first off in the meeting summary. So when I look at that page, that action item will be linked to that part of the description. What it's doing right now is trying to summarize it. 80% of the time, it does a good job. Let's see. I'm just going to let it think for a moment while it's doing that. And while it's thinking, let's jump back over to our meeting summary. So you can see any of the action items I capture are tracked here automatically. Here's all the action items from the call. If you use any highlights, this highlight button right here is great. If it's a part of the conversation I want to go back to, or I want to be able to share, it'll create a collection of all the highlights, which you can share just highlights with people. If you want to say, hey, Brandon, go check out this part of the call. I want to note that I know we're at 11 o'clock my time right now. If anyone needs to hop, I promise I won't be offended. We're just about at the end here anyway. But It has taken a long time to think through that action item. Usually it does it much quicker than that. And the final thing is it creates this list of questions. Anytime a question is asked in the call, it automatically detects it and creates here's all the questions I asked, here's all the questions they asked. I personally have not found a whole lot of use cases for it myself, but a bunch of clients on, say, sales calls find it really, really helpful to track information like that. And that, in a nutshell, is Fathom. It is completely free, which blows my mind. I'm not affiliated with them or any of these tools for what it's worth. I'm not pushing tools we're affiliated with. These are just the tools we've found and find valuable. I believe Fathom still has a wait list right now, but you are able to bypass the wait list if you use the link that I send out. Any user of Fathom gets invite codes, which is fantastic. So I will send that out shortly so anyone can get access to it. But long story short, that's our introductory, a little bit overtime session on AI. I was hoping to carve out a bit more time for questions at the end, but if anyone does have questions, I would be happy to spend some time answering them. I can go a little bit over if everyone here can.
Hey Connor, I had a quick question.
Yep.
Where are you? What are your primary sources to like discover new tools around this area?
There are two newsletters that I get right now that I find incredibly valuable. Number one, that super powered ChatGPT extension I talked about has a newsletter, and that newsletter almost always features different tools. So that's probably my number one source. I get it daily. Another one that I highly recommend everyone check out is called Daily Prompts. It's a newsletter that there's a small section on tools, but each day is a new prompt use case, and they're really high quality prompts. So those are the two big ones. Otherwise, just look at Product Hunt's AI section, and I found some really that's how I found Fathom initially. Was on Product Hunt.
Great, thank you.
Yep, you got it.
To me, it seems great. I just need the question that I want to ask: is there a tutorial or a page or somewhere you can direct us so we can learn more about it?
About Fathom in general, I would say first off, they do have a very good onboarding experience. Automated, it'll teach you how to use the various features in there. You could do it even if you've been a user for a while. There's I think it's called the tutorial call, and it'll walk you through a lot of the use cases for it. On the recording side of things, you're absolutely right. It does for legal reasons. It has to ask, hey, do we have permission to record this call? Just like with Zoom, anytime you join a Zoom room with recording on, unless the feature is specifically turned off, it is going to ask, hey, is it okay this call is being recorded? I'm surprised, frankly, that Otter doesn't do that. I guess it's probably because it's just doing a transcript. But I'm surprised that is a workaround. That's, for all intents and purposes, it's still a recording. The only thing I'll say is you can turn that off on Fathom. I don't recommend doing that. Again, from a legal perspective, if you turn that off on Fathom, then you have to let the person know when they join, hey, this is being recorded. Is that okay?
Yep. Okay, great. I started recording today. I don't know if you got that prompt. I've been using, like, this is the third time I've used it, and it just goes automatically every time I open a Zoom.
Yep. Couldn't be easier. I'm glad to hear that. It's a great tool. Again, I think it's the one tool that I've recommended the most often, and probably is the one tool that is most adopted from the people I recommend it to. Okay. Guys.
Thanks, Connor. That was great.
Thank you, Connor.
Stuart, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Connor. Have a great day.
Thank you, Connor. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.